Hello everyone, welcome to a World of Warships Blitz video. Today's video is the stats review for the Perth. So this time I'm recording it with the external microphone on, so this time it'll work. So first of all, I'm going to get rid of a few background noises because these will get quite annoying after a while. So let's just, there we go. Means it won't get any clicking either, so let's see how that goes. Right, okay, so the Perth, so I'm going to compare it to the other British light cruisers and the British heavy cruiser. I'm going to do two stats reviews. One is this stats review and the other one is rather a special and different stats review, which is going to be comparing with something, well, that's not another tier 6 cruiser. Right, okay. So the Perth is, from a survivability perspective, it's got nearly 20,000 hit points. It's got fairly standard protections, 7.5 citadel protection, 10% flooding and fire resistance, 7.5% damage reduction, and 6% torpedo damage reduction. Now if we compare that with the Leander, because this is very similar to the Leander has a couple of hundred extra hit points and exactly the same stats across the board. The Sirius, of course, is about 1,000 less hit points and has a 6% damage reduction rather than a 7.5%. The Sirius really is a very, very light cruiser. It's quite enjoyable to play, but it has underpowered punch compared with, let's say, the Leander, even though it can fire HE. The London obviously is the monster of the group with 23,600, so probably around about 3,800 more hit points than the Perth, but the same protections all round. Now from a speed perspective, all of them have exactly the same speed. There's a little bit of variation in how long they take to get to full speed, so all of them have 32.23 knots. Time to full speed is roughly 12 seconds, give or take. Maximum traverse speed is 8.22 degrees per second, with about 6 seconds to get into the turn. If we compare it with the Leander has the same top speed, about a second faster to get there, and it has 8.53 degrees per second rather than 8.22, so it's a little bit nippier in the turn, by around about 0.31. And it takes about a second less turn time. So the Perth is less agile than the Leander. It's also less agile. The most agile of the group is actually the Sirius, and the Sirius actually is slightly faster at 33.2 knots rather than 32.23. It has about the same as the Leander to get to full speed, but its maximum traverse speed at 8.74 is a smidgen faster than everything else, although its turn time is a bit slower. So faster in the turn, slower to get into the turn. The London, of course, actually is the slowest, so there you go. When I said they all had the same speed, I was dead wrong. Time to full speed, 14 seconds, so it's a bit slower to get there. It's a heavier ship after all, and it's got all those hit points to show for it. Maximum traverse speed, much reduced, 6.76 rather than 8.22, so about a degree and a half slower in the turn, and 7.37 is a smidgen over 6 seconds to get into the turn. Or smidgen over 7 seconds to get into the turn, so it takes probably about a second and a half longer to get into the full turning position compared with the Perth. Right, armaments. So the Perth compares relatively closely. I'll get rid of that by doing this. Right, the Perth compares relatively closely with the Leander, but on the guns perspective, those gun values are exactly the same as Leander, apart from the fact that it's got HE, 460 hit points per shot at 4% fire chance, which the Leander doesn't have. So exactly the same stats as Leander on the guns, but it has HE, so there you go. And the Leander guns are nice. Slightly slower reload than the Sirius, although the Sirius is 133 versus 152, means that it's a little less underpowered, a little more underpowered. So that 7.2 second reload is Well, yeah, it's almost as slow as the 7.5, although this does have 10 guns rather than the 8. As for firing range, it's the same, 11.07 kilometers. The Sirius, has much reduced HE and obviously AP for the smaller caliber guns. The London is the other side of things, still 11.7 kilometer range. 10, so 3 seconds slower to reload, but larger guns that do more damage. 817 AP damage versus 552, and a 7% fire chance of 598 rather than a 4% off 460 odd. So the London obviously is quite a different ship. So I mean, comparing it, I really am just doing a British or Commonwealth cruiser comparison. But there's not really much equivalence between the London and the Perth compared with, let's say, the Leander and the Perth. Right, let us go and have a look at the torpedoes. The torpedoes are 44.8 second reload, 3,335 damage, 6.55 kilometer range, 63.91 knots, and a 15% flooding chance, which is going to look awfully familiar. It also has 4 torpedoes per side, just like the Perth, with exactly the same stats. The Sirius has a faster reloading torpedoes, 38.4, which is really quick. 3 of them rather than 4 of them, but exactly the same stats otherwise. And the London has, well, exactly the same torpedoes as the Leander and the Perth. Now, the Perth cannot single fire the torpedoes, so just be aware of that. There is one area where the Perth is a little bit different, but single fire torpedoes are a sort of a weapon of desperation to use against battleships when you're really struggling to get through the armour with your guns. The Perth doesn't have that problem because you can maintain a long-range HE profile, so you never get in the situation where you're desperate for single-fire torpedoes. When fighting destroyers, spreads are definitely recommended from my perspective. Anti-aircraft, 110 large AA and 25 small AA with a 6.14 kilometer detection radius. Now that 6.14 is pretty good. In fact, that 6.14 is better than anything else. 6.45 for the Leander, 6.45 for the Sirius. Obviously, the London is nearly 7, which is still pretty good for a heavy cruiser, but still pretty massive. The AA, that 110 and 81, or that's 110 and 25 compares unfavourably with the Leander. Definitely the Sirius is the master of AA in the group because of it is an AA cruiser and it does have the AA skill. And the London, its AA large AA is the same, but it's got a lot more small caliber AA at 81 rather than 25, but still none of these AAs are worth banking on. Right, so the next thing we're going to do is have a look at the details. It has 3 fuel smokes, so they only last 10 seconds, but they cool down very quickly. I want to bring it up. 60-second cooldown, they only last 10 seconds, but once you're used to using them, actually they're not that bad. Now this ship does come with sonar, and for a potential cruiser hunting knife fighter, which this can play the role of, having smoke and sonar is lethal. Absolutely lethal. What a disgusting combination. I love it. Right. As for the upgrades, what are the choices? It's hit points with main traverse speed and, a small increase in large AA. I've taken the main battery traverse speed because I found that I was out-turning my guns. Now, you can't technically out-turn your guns, but what happens is you get into a turn, you're looking around and you can't relock back onto the original target. That 20% traverse speed means that you can get into a turn, keep a bit of observation going, and get back on target pretty quickly. So I found that's the one that I went for. I mean, I would like the extra hit points, yeah, that's personal choice. Right, and it does have battle honours, which of course are 2 ships in a battle, which was pretty straightforward. I mean, I've been playing a little bit of the respawn and 2 ships in respawn as a doddle, but yeah. Final things to mention are that it has camo. It does come, if you have to buy the Blitz pass to get this, so you get the premium Blitz pass. This is the first cab off the rank, which is really nice. You have to wait until you've unlocked 30 Blitz pass levels to get the captain, who is this guy Murdy. Now, coming from the Commonwealth myself, I have no idea what Murdy stands for. It seems Russian, it looks Russian, whatever. Okay, so maybe there's a Murdy out there in some other Commonwealth capacity other than a New Zealand one. So yeah, it is an Australian ship. Murdy doesn't seem Australian, but maybe, who knows what goes on in Western Australia. Okay then, well, there you go. So there's a stats comparison compared with particularly the Leander. It's very close to the Leander. I'll do another stats comparison. I may have to do several of them because the next stats comparison is something a little bit different, and it's based on my observations of playing the ship. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.